Well, my name is Dr. Morris Seligman. I attended Weber Elementary School, Parkway North Junior High School, Central High School, and Parkway North Senior High School.
Were there any experiences that you had in Parkway that particularly shaped the person that you've become today?
Oh, absolutely. I've said that if we had a time machine, one of the things that I would go back to would be the high school years. And even though all 4 years were great years, there were two that really stuck out in my mind. 10th grade, sophomore year, and my senior year. 10th grade primarily because we had the split sessions. Parkway North School was under construction, and we had to do the split sessions at Central, and we were in the noon to 6. But the experiences at high school really did provide a lot of the foundation of what I would end up doing later on. I found that the teachers there not only were very skillful in what they did, but they also got to know us as students, or at least I was fortunate enough to have teachers that really wanted to understand their students and help develop their careers and where they were headed with. I was even bringing that up today when I was doing a tour of the high school, Parkway North, with one of my teachers, Rick Blaha, and how the teachers were instructive in doing that. The course availabilities were just phenomenal, which also helped us a lot in developing not only who I am, but many other students that attended at Parkway North High School.
Talk a little bit about your college journey and your career immediately after college. You worked in the finance industry for a little while, and then you decided to enroll in med school at age 30, I believe. How did you come to that point in your life? What made you decide to go to med school? And then, now I know you have a career as a chief medical officer, so if you can talk a little bit about how your first career and your second career kind of came together.
It actually started with my parents. Interesting enough, because as I was sharing with Rick Blaha today, I said my parents made it very clear from a very young age that you must get a very good education. They really never defined what that education should be. What was very fine and excellent, just said you had to get a very good education. So keeping in the back of my mind, I sort of had a road mapped out of what I was going to do professionally, and number one on that list was to be a physician. And when I was in high school, and this is where I felt Parkway North and some of the teachers that I had were just very instrumental in developing that background when it came to science and mathematics, even in English and in history, and preparing for a career in medicine. And of course, taking 4 years of Latin, I guess, at the time was something that was important to do. Parkway offered, diversity in that type of education. And having the opportunity to take some advanced courses in science, such as advanced physics with Dr. George Bedard, was very instrumental in developing and continuing developing that interest in medicine. When I went on to college, I got involved, and even when I was in high school, I was very involved in finance. I was trading the stock market even as a teenager when I was in school, but I didn't take any business school classes when I was in high school, but I did do that in college. So I was actually doing both. I was doing science, math, I was doing economics, finance, accounting. Some people said he's not sure what he's going to do in life, but he was all over the place. So I ended up pursuing a career in business and finance originally. I worked at Arthur Andersen as a CPA, eventually worked at a brokerage house and did a lot of financial planning and consulting, but I always still wanted to go to medical school. So I did go back. I got a degree in engineering science to fulfill the med school requirements, and then went to medical school at the University of Missouri Columbia. But I do look back at all the years in high school and thinking of the diversity of education that I had, and the teachers that I had really provided a very strong foundation to that. And of course, the pushing of my parents saying, you must go to school.
So today you're a chief medical officer at Mountain States Health Alliance.
Correct.
And this is in Tennessee. Is this in Franklin where you live, or?
Well, it's in Johnson City, Tennessee. Of course, I grew up, I was born and reared in St. Louis, Missouri, where I spent the bulk of my life. And this is actually, this position that I have as the Executive Vice President and Chief Medical Officer for this 13 hospital health system. It's the first time that I've been out of the Midwest. My entire life, either living or working, has been spent there. Folks have said to me, well, you haven't picked up the Southern drawl yet. I don't think I have. I don't say you all yet anyway. But it's been a great experience working at Mountain States Health Alliance. I've had the opportunity to have a lot of impact on the delivery of care and what our patients receive when they come to our hospitals and clinics and outpatient facilities. Again, I look upon the education that I received not only in college, but I always do look back at those days in high school from the science, the math, the English, and the history, which again was that foundation that eventually led to me in the diverse education that I would experience later on post-graduation from high school.
Do you think high school students who may be considering a career in medicine ever consider a career like chief medical officer? That's something that, does that come to you later when you're thinking about how you might specialize or refine your career a little bit?
You know, if it was 30 years ago, I would say that probably would be true today because how medicine has changed. Unfortunately, there's a lot more business involved in healthcare today. So the younger physicians are realizing that they probably need to have more than just a clinical training, that you do need to have some level of business, maybe not to the degree of having business degrees, MBAs, and so forth, but a better appreciation. The medical schools have also recognized this as well. There's 40 some, maybe close to 50 schools now that offer the joint MD, MBA degree, so a lot of students have taken advantage of that. Even recently, I had a young man just come to my office 2 weeks ago that wants to do an internship with me. He's a student in public health, and now he's thinking about getting a medical degree in either like an MPH or an MBA, combining the business aspects of medicine. So I think the younger folks today realize that their horizons and what they need to know if they're in healthcare is a little bit different than it was maybe 20 or 30 years ago.
So you've lived elsewhere for quite a few years now, not in the St. Louis area. What's one thing that you miss about living in St. Louis?
Well, my dad, my mother when she was alive, my in-laws, family. Obviously, I do miss the St. Louis Cardinals. The folks that know me, I'm a huge baseball guy. I've been like that since I was a young guy, probably around age 7. I've lived the sport and probably some of the most detailed aspects of the game that one would know. I've spent my whole life studying baseball, so missing the Cardinals is a big deal. But I've been fortunate in a couple of the cities where I've lived, there have been farm league teams, minor league teams of the St. Louis Cardinals. When I was in the Quad Cities, they had one of the teams there. And where I'm at now, there's the Johnson City Cardinals. And they actually sport the uniform. And matter of fact, when the Cardinals won the World Series in 2011, they brought the trophy to the ballpark there and showed that off for a couple of days. So even though I don't have the pleasure of being real close to the St. Louis Cardinals, even though I've gone to games over the years, come to town, I do have at least a Cardinal team there, and it's always nice to see the birds on the bat when attending the games.
What kind of trivia do you know about baseball?
Trivia about baseball.
About baseball.
Oh, about baseball. All kinds of trivia. There's endless amount of trivia. I'll share you one, though, and one of my areas that I've spent a lot of time studying besides baseball is U.S. presidents. And so one of the questions that I will ask folks when in the right circumstances is, you know, who was the first U.S. president to attend a World Series game? Yeah.
Calvin Coolidge?
Calvin Coolidge. You're sort of in the right
in the ballpark?
territory. Yeah, sort of the right. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Sort of in the right ballpark there. Actually, this U.S. president actually holds an interesting set of distinctions. He was the only U.S. president that, when he became president, he had a Ph.D. And he had also been the president of an Ivy League university. And so that U.S. president is Woodrow Wilson. Woodrow Wilson. And matter of fact, being the first president to attend a World Series game, that occurred in 1915. And the winner of that World Series was Boston. So this picture here is at least a part of my life here. Some of these pictures over here when I was actually in high school, and you can see that I had kind of an interesting set of mutton chops and so forth that I've been ribbed about over the years. These are obviously when I was much younger. There's some pictures here of my children, my wife Jody, who was actually a graduate of 1974 class like myself, and of course a little bit about my career. Going to medical school, and my current job is Executive Vice President, Chief Medical Officer. And of course I have a great passion for baseball and sports, and so I've had an opportunity to meet Hank Aaron. I've played golf with Peyton Manning and Dan Marino. And of course, in the political world, because of some of the work that I do does involve politics, I've had the opportunity to meet Newt Gingrich as well. I do get ribbed about my car, a blue Ford Focus 2002. I've been, I guess, just taunted and just been made fun of for many years about that car. But recently, I decided to step up the game a little bit with about a 500 horsepower vehicle. That's quite a number of the folks now where I currently work.